Hi, I'm Jill Gostin, the IEEE Region 3 Director. I hope you find these volunteer resources useful and informative. This is one of several modules which provide training and informational resources for individuals serving in volunteer roles at the IEEE region, section, and chapter level. In 2020, our annual Region 3 conference had to be canceled due to COVID-19. Because of that, we quickly decided to go virtual. We held WebEx meetings to provide the training and information that was to be given to volunteers at the conference, and we recorded those sessions. These recorded modules created the foundation for our IEEE Region 3 Volunteers YouTube channel. The value of these recorded modules has become very evident, so we will continue to build on what is offered here. If you have suggestions for additional content, please leave a request in the comments below.
Jill, if you will kick off the meeting and for the evening, and then we'll have Kristen give us her presentation to lead off.
Sure. Wanted to say welcome everybody. I am Jill Gostin. I am the Region 3 Director, and I want to welcome you all to the last in this series of meetings about events. As most of you probably know, we're trying to get all of our sections to try something new this year, or at least to plan something new. If they can't do it this year, maybe they can do it next year. And tonight I'm excited to have Kristen talking about new events that involve the subunits of your section, the chapters, the branch, the affinity groups. And then Bill will also be talking about potential outreach events that you could hold. So thank you, Kristen and Bill, and I will turn it back over to Kristen or Mark, whoever's taking over.
Okay, can everyone see my screen with the PowerPoint slide?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. It's been about 3 months sitting on my computer waiting to be presented since SoutheastCon went virtual. So Jill asked me to talk about new events for subunits, and for tonight, subunits will be defined as subunits of a section, so subsections, chapters, affinity groups. Okay, there we go. So my first comment is that we want to try to add variety to the events that we offer within our sections. We don't want to stagnate and stay in the same thing. And we can't really now because we have COVID and we need to make many events virtual, and we may need to do that for quite some time. And as I was reviewing my presentation, I was thinking of all these categories and which ones could be made virtual, and it turns out quite a few. And so I'll kind of talk through some of those as we go through it tonight. And I'll note that I'm stealing ideas liberally from my son's teachers because they did a real good job of making lots of things go virtual in the spring. So the 4 main types of events that you could hold for your subsections, chapters, or encourage them to hold would be technical meetings, professional meetings, non-technical meetings, and administrative. And I put a few examples of each in these categories, and we'll talk more about them as we go along, but it's important to hit a mix and try to see what kind of turnout you get for each of these types of meetings and play to the interests of the groups in your particular section. And I just have awards bolded, highlighted, and italicized because I'm the awards chair, so I have to do it. Okay, so brainstorming. As we go along, I'm going to be giving ideas that are not all my own. They came a lot from the brainstorming that the XCOM did back in December of 2019 when Jill held a meeting to try to ideas for new events. But I'd like to hear even newer ideas that you guys have. So if you can add those to the chat window as we go along, that would be good. And then I can check them at the end. So some new event ideas that I have to help spur your thinking is that you could do something like run a chapter fair. So this could be having if we weren't COVID, having a booth for every chapter to talk to their people about what they do. So you might have lots of people in your section and they'd like to get involved, but they don't really know what kind of society they belong to. They might actually have interests that cross between multiple societies. And so if each chapter was there to give a little elevator talk, then that would help. Now, of course, we could go virtual with this and have something like we're doing tonight, where the chapters each talked for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, and you went through a prearranged order just to keep it nice and orderly, and you could get through. There's also a lot of benefit to doing kid-friendly technical events in the Atlanta section. We do quite a few of these, and they're very well attended, not only by IEEE members, but families in the area. And some of those families just need another outlet besides the schools to help their children with science and engineering. Other families have engineers in the family, and they're interested in rejoining IEEE, and it's just good exposure. But Bill is talking about outreach, so I'm not going to go too far down into kid-friendly events and workshops, just to say that they are good publicity for your section. Industry tours are really good to encourage your chapters to do, because you could have, for instance, Power and Energy arrange a tour of a power plant, or a computer science society. They can look at the data center, and you might say again, well, companies probably aren't going to let us do that in COVID. They might have something already arranged at this point in terms of a video or some webcams of areas that they're willing to show the public that you might be able to arrange as part of an event. I know museums have this, and aquariums and that sort of thing. And so I don't think it's a huge leap that some other very large companies might start this type of thing. And then you can also have joint technical and social tours. So have something that gets the technical juices flowing, and then have some time at the end for folks to ask questions and to talk to one another about what they just learned. Maybe not too much, we're engineers, but just something where folks can get to know one another and start planning other events. Social events for spouses and significant others. This is where something like an awards banquet might come into play. Choosing a speaker who's interesting to all is always fun, because you'll have multiple technical levels and interests in the audience. Some examples of things that might appeal to everyone is a discussion on robotics and how they apply to everyday life, or you can have someone from an aquarium come in and talk about all the engineering that goes behind keeping the tanks clean and at the right temperatures and that sort of thing. And they'll throw in pictures of pretty fish and everyone will be happy. An improv workshop is good for the non-technical side. So you could do things like have folks come in and teach how to give elevator speeches or how to answer questions in an interview that you weren't expecting. That kind of situation. You can have more social events like escape rooms. We've had picnics at various museums, and then let people have reduced or free admission into the museum, that sort of thing. And then if you have technical conferences brought to your area, that's a good way to bring money to your chapters and to your sections. It doesn't need to be thousands of people. It could be hundreds of people. You could use a nearby university for the rooms, and that greatly decreases costs, as Bill can tell you, with a conference that he helped run. So it's not as arduous as you might think if you do a little planning ahead of time. And then networking events can also be done with non-IEEE local societies. So I know Women in Engineering loves to have networking events with Society of Women Engineers and Women in Technology, for example, and there's many others that we could go through. Now you can also hold professional development meetings, for instance, project management meetings. I don't know how many PMP emails I've gotten since the beginning of COVID saying that there's a higher percentage of people than ever before wanting to get their PMP. So something like that might be of interest to folks in your section. We can also offer training and preparation for different certification exams, particularly exams that are unique to your chapters. And you can video conference with an expert, which might be something like this, although I'm not an expert, but you could include live question and answers in a technical area for your chapter, or maybe a panel for women in engineering, that sort of thing. And do we have any good comments that we want to talk about at this time? I've got my screen filled up with the PowerPoint, so if Bill or Mark can kind of highlight something, that'd be great.
Yeah, we've got a couple of comments that have been made. Let me make sure I'm starting at the top here, but one idea, well, Dave Green's given us two ideas: do an online shared document creation of a draft milestone proposal, do online brainstorming of future section programs, suggest ideas, vote up, vote down various ideas. Steve Kemp, how and why to volunteer, what's in it for me? And then Woodrow Williams has said that the training does not have to be restricted to CE. I believe that's all the feedback so far that we've gotten.
Okay, those are all great ideas. And with the last one, I agree that training doesn't have to go with CEs or anything formal like that. But it's just an example of something that you can put together. So if it's just training for training's sake, that's good too. Great.
One thing I will throw out, and this came up in a call that I was on the other day, is that we've got a lot of new graduates that maybe are new to the job market, need help with understanding how to be effective in a virtual environment, especially teamwork. So could be that there's some ideas around that from the standpoint of, I know that we've got some webinars that are available on IEEE USA and on the IEEE Learning Network that can kind of help you out with some soft skills in those areas. So those are some things that you might do. We were thinking about doing that with an event, would be to hold kind of a mock interview process or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. All great ideas. I have some other ones here on slide 5. The first one's humanitarian efforts, which might fall under outreach. So just point that out and let Bill talk about that in the second half hour. IEEE 101 meetings kind of go hand in hand with what Mark just mentioned with webinars and that sort of thing, because the Volt program and the presentations that they have up there give us a lot of ideas about how to perform officer positions in IEEE. There's material out there on how to get more out of our IEEE membership. In the Atlanta section, we've had webinars that our officers have put on for various chapters on how to use IEEE tools like B tools and that sort of thing in order to better run their chapters. And then having senior member roundups is never a bad idea, because we know that senior members stick in around in IEEE longer usually. And if you do it by companies, it works out fairly well, because you can identify a set of senior members or higher that are willing to do recommendations, and then have a meeting for people who'd like to go up for senior member to tell them what they need and help pair them up with some senior members who are willing to write those recommendations. And they don't need to be people who know one another. They just need to share resumes back and forth. Although, according to Mary Ellen's presentation the other night, it's good to have at least one person who has worked with the individual. Then you can have your chapters collaborate with those in neighboring sections. So I know chapters in Atlanta have done that before, chapters in Huntsville, where distinguished lecturers come through from a particular society. And while they're in the Southeast, we just have them keep on going towards the East and hit both sections within a couple days of one another. You can have events where you're introducing IEEE to the city. This might be through the kids events we talked about before, or it could be through IEEE Day. It could be through milestones, which is actually the last bullet on the slide. If you're not familiar with milestones, those are important events or engineering inventions that happened in your section. You register them with IEEE, and then you can have a ceremony to put a plaque in that particular area. And Region 3 in general could have quite a few milestones compared to what we have. So there's plenty to go around there. And then make your events accessible to different ages. Take into account the statistics that you have. So if you have lots of students all the way to lots of life members, then you have a kind of hard task of making sure you have events that appeal to everyone. But you could do things like have the life members act as mentors to the students or young professionals. You could have data security talks that appeal to the computer society, but also appeal to folks who are looking for more of the kind of real world type information. And then it's always good to try to open up events to student branches. If nothing else, just invite student branches to talks that might be of interest to them. You have Ada Kappa New events, legislative days, where you go to the state capitol, and you might do this in conjunction with eWeek. Engineers Week is usually big on college campuses, so this might be another opportunity for you to engage with your student branches and see if there's any events where maybe they need a panel of experts, and folks from your chapters could help out with that. And then you could do presentations on new technologies like 3D printers, drones, etc. Something maybe from the companies that the professionals in your area work on that could be presented to other individuals. And then I already talked about the milestones there. Are there any questions or comments there?
Not at this point. We don't have any. One thing I will mention is that I really, the legislative day thing is going to be, I think, maybe very important with all the changes that may be coming around. I know there's a couple of things that are in Washington right now that are getting some attention. Also, with the money that's being thrown at internet connectivity into various locations, it could be that we may need to encourage that, especially with the rural areas that exist in our states.
Sure. Great. Moving on, we've got we have all these event ideas. How do we make suggestions to your chapters in a way that will make them want to take the leap and exceed the activation energy to make new events? So the easiest way is to make it easy for them. So some sort of roadmap, which can include things like, how can the event be funded? So point out that you chapters in your section have a budget that the section agrees upon and votes on each year. And they could also charge some nominal fee for their events and set up PayPal accounts on their own, or have it run through the section if needed, in order to get the appropriate funds to have new events. You can also give the chapters a list of venues that have worked before for IEEE events. So this could include how many people they hold, the cost to hold the event there, etc. So for example, if you know there's a restaurant in town that has an easily configurable room that can be made private, it can hold up to maybe, let's say, 100 people, and it doesn't have any rental costs, it just has the price of the food. As long as you have X number of people there, then that's something that chapters would want to know about. And then some new chapter chairs and officers may not be aware that their society has distinguished lecturer listings online, and that each of the societies has a slightly different way of handling it, but there's some funding for having distinguished lecturers come to talk in your section usually. So some societies pay half of the travel costs, for example. So this could help them get a renowned speaker for a fraction of the cost. And then providing lots of ideas for them, such as what we've been talking about here and what people said on the chat, will give chapters kind of the menu to choose from, and they can figure out what they think will attract their members the most and go after those. So suggestions for successful events within the chapters or the affinity groups is to have events that are at the right time, location, and have food. You can take us out of grad school, but we still want free food. So at times like having a lunch and learn session might be good, or having dinner and a meeting might also be good. And having it in a nice location that's central to the most number of people that you think might be attending. Or if you're targeting a particular technical area, then you might know that they'll be coming from their work, which is at maybe a small number of companies, and you can have the event at one of those companies. Having distinguished lecturers can help attract greater attendance because they will have heard of the speaker more than not. And then having joint meetings between 2 or more of your chapters or affinity groups also helps with the turnout, because not only can you advertise it through your section list, but those chapters and affinity groups will target their individual lists and have 2 or 3 times the success, depending on how many chapters you're putting together. And then to spur your chapters on to continue this sort of thing, awards are always good. So for instance, you might have outstanding chapter awards and outstanding volunteer awards in your section. And you can ask the chapters to nominate individuals within their section. You can have chapters kind of write up what they've done in an attempt to win the chapter award. You can make it where your XCOM decides on who gets these awards, whatever works for the size and makeup of your particular section. But giving people some recognition never hurts, in my opinion. And then there are also societies, in a few are computer and power energy, that have outstanding chapter awards. So you can help lift up chapters in your area for those national level or international level society awards. And then make sure that the chapters know about upcoming IEEE awards deadlines, like the Region 3 deadline on December 1st. All right. So that's all I had in the main section. Does anybody have any questions? I got about 5 minutes left in my half of this presentation.
Okay, let me just go ahead and unmute everyone, and then that way, if anyone has any questions, they can throw it out. I do know Steve Kemp threw out the fact that if you have multiple entities, affinity groups, chapters, even section, they all can get credit for that event. So that's a good point. All right, everyone should be muted. I'm going to speak, put yourself on mute, and that way we keep down. Anyone have any questions? Okay, I've muted everyone back up so that we can go ahead and let Bill take the floor. Again, if you have any questions during Bill's presentation, put those into the chat window and we'll go over those as Bill moves through his presentation. Bill, go ahead and get us started. Bill, you should be unmuted.
But I don't have the ball.
You don't. I can fix that.
All right, got it. Let me try this. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
How about that? Okay, so I've got 3 different microphones attached to my laptop and didn't get a chance to figure out which one it is. So I will speak into the most obvious one. My name is Bill Marshall, and what I'm going to do is maybe raise some more questions that I answer, but I'm going to try and start a dialogue tonight. Let me move on to the next screen. So I want to remind everyone of the purpose of this presentation, and forgive me for the complete sentences on this first slide. This was, I needed to type it out in order to get organized the thoughts, but this is a part of a series that was prescribed by Jill Gostin, our Region 3 Director for this year and next, to support sections hosting a new kind of event that they've never done before, they haven't done recently. And it only has, as my understanding, to be new to that section, which means that leveraging off of the lessons of learned from other sections is a good thing. In fact, part of the goal here. Now, part of the priority here is for the sections in Region 3 to fulfill their role as a primary touch point between IEEE and the member. And I've used the word A there. There are people on this call that would say that this section is the primary touch point between IEEE and the member. But the reality is that we come in, some of us are interested only in standards work, or we've gotten connected to IEEE through a conference or something like that. So this is not to push them down or anything, but this is to hold on to the aspiration to raise the role of your section, the one you're in, the one that you're a volunteer for, and make it more interactive to the members that are in your section. And you'll see later on through this outreach topic to the communities in which we all live in. This was originally intended to be part of a 2-stage initiative, split between SoutheastCon and Sections Congress. And Jill was going to issue a challenge at SoutheastCon. I remember her using that word. And then check on the progress at Sections Congress. But it's really was a 2-part launch and assist to get an update from you and help out as we could. Well, the pandemic has messed all that up, so we're a little bit behind in getting started. But one of the things I want to accomplish tonight is to get that launch part at least spoken of and sent on your way. So the 3 objectives that I have tonight are to begin this conversation and hopefully establish a community of interest across Region 3. As I'm going to mention, as will become apparent as I'm giving this presentation, this is the outreach and the preparatory work that I'm proposing is something that's kind of near and dear to me. I'm going to advocate an alternate mindset on the role of IEEE to the member and the profession and the community, some of a mindset that some of you may not have or may have left behind, and develop a roadmap for section outreach. Now, the roadmap's not in these slides, but hopefully we can start that conversation for developing that roadmap. So why outreach? Well, it's my claim that most of the STEM professionals that are IEEE members, and probably almost all of the people on this call, didn't simply choose the profession that they're in, which is a STEM-related profession, science, technology, engineering, math, only because they're good at it. Either as they chose it, or it was chosen for them, or something they fell into, or in the process of shaping their careers, and in fact, becoming a volunteer that's on this call tonight, they wanted to accomplish something meaningful out of their day jobs. We tend to be the kinds of people that want to invent, design, build, test, deploy, use, improve something. We want our work to mean something, and we want it to leave behind a residue. So one of the things, my claim, is that making the larger community aware of what we do as professionals, STEM professionals, what we do as local IEEE members, as what we do as part of a grand um, enterprise that is IEEE, making the rest of our community aware of that is a worthwhile endeavor. So what it is, what I'm sort of, the way I'm organizing this tonight, as I'm taking outreach as a way of just reaching beyond a little bit. The aim point here tonight is just a little bit beyond where your current members are. It's not to leave them behind. In the process of preparing to do that is to pull them into the planning and development process, and then take them with us as we go out. But one of the opinions that I have is that through an outreach targeted endeavor, we kind of gather up some of the initiatives that tend to be stovepiped out into individual initiatives like member recruitment or industry relations or government relations, the K through 12 STEM projects. And the other part of this, and this is something that I think gets lost on us sometimes. At least it's been my experience, is that we have a story to tell, and in the process of preparing to tell that story, one of the benefits that comes out of that is that we each reacquaint ourselves, and we acquaint the volunteers that are near us, and we reacquaint the members who joined at some point in their career IEEE with what that IEEE story is. So this is an anchoring proposition that I'm going to offer to you. And it's kind of an interruption to the flow of outreach. It's kind of an opinion that I hold, that again, I know that some other people on the call hold. And that is the professionals that are in IEEE will be we better serve our own careers, our own membership experience, the profession that we're in, the community that we're in, if in addition to thinking about ourselves as consumers of IEEE products and goods, we also thought about ourselves as part of a greater objective, part of a greater cause that's underway. And I have there the comment that says, who are we? Well, we are the engaged member. We're the ones that if we can change and add to our mindset, um, we can be the ones that can become change engines within IEEE and outside of IEEE. There was another thought I was going to have there. It's gone. So let me get back to where we are. Who are we? Maybe almost all of you, maybe all of you know this, and this is a wasted slide. But where do we come from? I went to the IEEE History Center page today and I pulled this up. The spring of 1884, a small group of individuals met and formed the American Institute of Electrical Engineering. Some of the people involved there were coming from telegraphy. Thomas Edison was there. Alexander Graham Bell was involved. They formed this basic institution that was a place to gather up the aspirations, the experiences, the commercial interests of people involved in electrical technology in the time. But that was all wired. Then in 1912, the Institute of Radio Engineers was formed for the wireless or for the radio, the wireless telegraphy or the radio experience. It was formed basically, the AIEE was formed as a mold, was the mold that by which that developed. And those two bodies existed in parallel until 1963 when they merged, and we have today's IEEE. Which I thought it was important to put this comment in here from the History Center, and that is the fact that IEEE stands for, as you know, the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers. But as the world's largest technical organization, we represent the interests, the training opportunities, the efforts of the broad category of science, technology, engineering, mathematics professions. And so that is, for all of us, IEEE is our professional home. Who are we number two? So who are we now and what do we do? Well, from a technical perspective, we're now more than 400,000 members in 160 countries. An interesting little point in this that probably you don't know, more than 50% of them come up right now from outside the United States. As you're reaching out to the community, that's a data you can take out there to on the one side, point out the fact that we are a truly global organization and our capacity for influence is global. On the other side, as you're going out to your communities, to your governments, to your institutions, to the other societies, what you can do is point out that we're falling behind perhaps in terms of IEEE members. 568 affinity groups. And I wanted to bring this up. There's a number of chapters, Kristen talked about the technical chapters that exist in the sections. But one of the things I wanted to do was to point out that we have the Consultants Network, we have young professionals, we have women in engineering, we have life members. That is to say, IEEE actively tries to provide a professional home for members and prospective members, even across different changes in their background. So some of what we do, more than 5 million documents are in our IEEE Explorer digital library, with 12 million downloaded each month. I'll go through these other three bullets. Over 1,200 active standards. We think about the standards work that IEEE does. Publishes 200 different publications, transactions, journals, and magazines, and sponsors more than 1,900 conferences in 103 countries. I can tell you that as one that's been to a couple of IEEE board meetings just in the past year, to see all the activities that are involved in governing IEEE, in maintaining IEEE, the organization whose roots go back more than 100 years now. I'm going to use a mechanical engineering analogy, and I'm going to call it the image of a flywheel. Hopefully most of you know what I'm talking about. It is this massive, high mass object that you spend a lot of energy to spin, and it spins slowly at first. And as you keep investing that energy into the flywheel, it gets spinning faster and faster. And there's so much energy in that kinetic motion that it becomes something that then becomes difficult to stop. I like to think of IEEE as if it was a professional flywheel that is the current place that holds all of the accumulated technical knowledge, all of the accumulated investment in ethics and standards work, in the publications that we do. And so the reason I wanted to put this slide up here was to emphasize, more than I wanted to actually, but emphasize the fact that I do believe we have a story to tell. We're doing great work together as a institute, something that no other body across the planet is capable of doing. The next slide I want to show you is this. What I did was I went to that webpage, which is where IEEE just basically describes in a very high level detail the humanitarian and philanthropy work that it does. I offer these to you simply as in this presentation, simply as category headings, that's what I'm looking for these different insights. But these are various global and national initiatives for investing in technology, and as our bylaw, as our tagline says, for IEEE, advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. I wanted to remind you, under the presumption you already knew this, that there is a tremendous amount of work that IEEE does to take its technical prowess and use that to reinvest back into the global community. So this might be my last slide. Yes. So it's just some ideas to consider. And this again is to try and initiate the conversation. Get on the calendar to speak at your city council or your county commission. Now, one of the things that I had intended to say before this slide, but I'll say it now, as I suggest reaching out to the city or to the county or having science nights, um, hosting, well, let's just go with those first two. I don't know precisely right now what you would say to your city or your county or what you would present at a science night. But the thought I have is this, that if you actually go through the process of trying to figure out what it is you would say and gather together as a section, virtually if necessary, but physically if possible or when it's possible, to discuss the things that you might, decide how you want to present to the city or to the county to describe what IEEE does. What that does is it takes you through the very kind of process that I've been talking about right now tonight, which is to go back and re-examine IEEE in a way that you probably haven't done before. It gives you an externally focused objective to shoot for, other than simply saying, okay, what can we have an idea for? What kind of an idea can we have for an event? And so it changes the focus then. So you could have, for example, for the count, getting on the counter, you could have a story making meeting where you decide what would we want to say to this city council or to that county commission. And all of us are coming from different circumstances. I live in Smyrna, Georgia, which is a suburb of the Metro Atlanta area. Metro Atlanta is about 5.6 million people. I could try and get on the Atlanta calendar, but that wouldn't make sense for me to do from Smyrna. I checked today. Smyrna itself has 56,000 residents. It was about twice what I thought it was, actually. But I've been to city council meetings, and I've gotten myself on agenda not for IEEE, but for other organizations. And I was there once, in fact, when I was there representing the HOA, and there was a change being proposed, and I said, I'm the treasurer of the HOA, and the fire chief who's on the council perked up and paid attention to me right away. And so the aspiration is that we could go to a city council meeting or a county commission meeting and say, I'm Bill Marshall, and I'm here representing IEEE, and they perk up the same way. Science nights are something that Kristen talked about, which are ways to take the knowledge that we've accumulated and try and present it back down to pre-K, pre-college students. The interesting thing there is, I don't know how many of you have taught courses, but we spend our careers accumulating a body of knowledge in our head, and it's such an interesting exercise to then try and serialize that in a way that you can present it to people. Host a spouse-friendly social event. This is something that Krista talked about. So select topics that are like the impact of technology on our society. Spouses of members, especially if the same gender, they do talk outside of these events. We had an event in 2004 which kind of fell in our lap. The Atlanta section was celebrating its 100th year. And so we contacted the History Center and suggested something to him to talk about. I forget what it was. I think Turner Broadcasting, because that was a big deal in Atlanta at the time. And he actually came up with a notion of giving a history of WSB radio, which is a big media pillar here in Atlanta. And it drew people from Atlanta who remember listening to WSB when it was AM only, and now it's a TV station, it's FM. Look for those kinds of topics that are related to what we do, but would be appealing to people from the outside. Ask to host a meeting with a local employer within your section territory that may not, in fact, have any IEEE members at it. Just think about the challenge of going, if you're in a section that has one or two or three major employers there, a lot of your neighbors, a lot of your friends work at that employer. Imagine trying to take a description of what IEEE is and a proposal for hosting a local section meeting to that employer and asking for like a meeting space or something like that. It would be a marvelous exercise to try and distill that down and present that to the employer. And you might then again have the idea, all right, if I'm going to actually host a meeting, can I add some technical content to the section meeting and what might be interesting to the employees of this company? And of course, this is something that Kristen mentioned as well, which is to partner with non-IEEE organizations. And so, uh, the, one of the uh, goals here, it's not a direct goal, but it's an indirect benefit, I guess I should say, is that as you strive to meet your meeting count at the end of 2020, which is going to be a challenge for many of you in sections with the COVID situation, these are opportunities for you to pull together section meetings, to plan for some of these things, or to open up these conversation topics among the members, and then decide whether you want to pitch something external to that. So just as my summary, reach out, can, as I just talked about, initiate that sort of recovery process for you of what IEEE is, and it increases IEEE's awareness in your local community. I just want to remind you all, or let you all know, that are section volunteers, that you've got your area chairs out there. They're meeting monthly with Teresa Bernasso, the chair, the director-elect. And you've got the section support committee that I'm the chair of. And in fact, we've been hosting these meetings for you this month and last, or the past 3 months now, since SoutheastCon. And I just put this last comment in here. This is a pet project of mine. I think, for me, the pet project is uh, people think of themselves as customers of IEEE, and they are. And we each have to make the budgetary decision for our home finances on whether it's worthwhile to put our money in each year to our membership. But I would like us to expand that out. I would like us to find opportunities to make our neighbors aware of what we do as engineers, um, mathematicians, physicists, medical doctors, as you saw listed. Um, and as a pet project, I'm willing to help you out. So it's June. This is sort of the initiate challenge event that we didn't get to have in March. Um, I got my email address on that first slide. I can't, since I'm sharing my screen, I can't see anything, Mark, so I'm going to hand it over to you in just a moment. But if you have any questions or comments tonight, I'll do my best to answer them in the time that's left. And I certainly invite you to send me an email. Let's see what we can pull together. Because as I said at the beginning of this presentation, I'd like to start to form a community of interest with the hope of individual sections reaching out to their local communities. So that's all I have, Mark.
Okay, Bill, thanks. Before I do this, I wanted to go ahead and give everyone a chance to make sure that if they have anything in their background noise that I'll give you a little bit of a warning. But I will go ahead and unmute everyone, and if anybody has any comments or questions for Bill, then he can, then you'll be able to make those. So I am now unmuting everybody. And you all speak, and if you don't have anything that you'd like to raise, please mute yourself back. Anyone have any questions or comments for Bill? Okay, I'm not hearing anything.
If I can ask Jill, if you don't mind, Mark, since this wraps up the 4 parts of the presentations and the events, is there anything, any additional spin, Jill, that you want to put on this, or anything you want to ask from the section support committee for follow-up efforts?
So I guess to wrap up, Mark, can you mute everybody else temporarily? I'll just say, first of all, thank you to all of our speakers and to everyone that has called in to these different meetings. There were 4 days, but 8 different topics covered. I think we had some really great presentations. I hope those of you that are can have taken away some ideas for potential new events and have a conversation going in your section about new events this section can do. And maybe you're even challenging your subunit, your chapter, your affinity groups to also host some kind of new event. Um, Even if it's something you may not be able to do this year, we don't know what the end of this year is going to look like, but you can at least get plans in place of something that you could do next year if it's not something you could enact this year. I will be asking every section to provide an update on their idea for the new event for our August committee meeting, region committee meeting, which will be the third Monday in August. So watch for that. And for those of you on the line that are area chairs, I hope that you will also help remind your sections about that and offer to help them as needed, especially those sections that aren't on the line right now. So I think that's all I want to say. Oh, just a reminder that also maybe not until August, maybe no meetings in July on these Wednesday evenings, but I'm hoping for August and maybe September to have one meeting from Ada Kappa Nu that will talk about how sections can get involved in Ada Kappa Nu induction ceremony, and perhaps one from our Standards Association. Just giving you a little bit of and some information on some of the different groups that maybe you don't hear from very often. So again, thanks to all the speakers, Bill, for setting this up. And thank you all for calling in.